For months, the Georgia election interference case felt like it was doomed. It was stuck, frozen, lost in a political and legal black hole that seemed set to guarantee its quiet, undignified end. But we have new hopes today. It's the prosecution aimed at President Donald Trump and his allies. The effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election in one of the most critical battleground states. Today, that silence is over. The case is not just back, it's alive. It's charging forward. It marks a triumph of determination against incredible pressure. It's a story of political maneuvering, cynical delay tactics, and the sheer force required to keep a case like this from collapsing under its own weight. The man tasked with bringing back this case is the man who was forced to take it on himself. The head of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia, Pete Skandalakis, has stepped into the fire. Pete Skandalakis says, while it would have been simple to allow Judge McAfee's deadline to lapse or to inform the court that no conflict prosecutor could be secured, I did not believe that to be the right course of action. He's the new reluctant prosecutor in a case that no one else in Georgia dared to touch. And for us, that fact alone speaks volumes about the battle to hold power accountable under the law. We can finally be optimistic about justice moving forward. To understand where we are in the case, we must revisit the stunning procedural turn that nearly killed the case entirely. It all starts with former Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. She was the one that bravely brought the sweeping, dramatic indictment against Trump and his co-conspirators in August 2023. Unfortunately, Trump's defense team successfully managed to disrupt the prosecution using a clever legal maneuver. It was a cynical tactic aimed for the prosecutor Fani Willis, which exposed just how flawed our American justice system is. They successfully seized upon the fact that Willis's professional life became entangled with her personal life. The defense filed motions arguing that her relationship with the special prosecutor on the case created an appearance of impropriety. That was a strategy designed for purposeful delay. They didn't have to prove that the underlying charges were wrong. They only had to prove that anything about the legal process was outside the confines of the integrity of the court. The trial judge agreed. He ruled that while her conduct may not have been technically illegal, it created the appearance that could cast serious doubt on the case's integrity. And in the justice system, maintaining public confidence is everything. So in order to protect the perception of fairness, even with the underlying criminal charges intact, Willis was forcibly removed. She fought the removal all the way to the Georgia Supreme Court, but in a moment of procedural inequality, they declined to hear the appeal. The prosecution was left dangling. That strategic legal victory by the defense created a massive urgent void that put the entire prosecution in immediate jeopardy. But even in that crisis, Democrats' belief in accountability remained absolute. The responsibility to fill that void fell entirely on Pete Skandalakis. He's the executive director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. His task was to find someone before today's deadline to take on the most explosive and unbelievable case in the country. The task was nearly impossible. Judge Scott McAfee set a hard, inescapable deadline of today for November 14th, 2025. If Skandalakis failed to appoint a replacement by today, the case will be dismissed, not because of guilt or innocence, but because of a procedural technicality. And as the deadline loomed, the truth became alarmingly clear. Nobody wanted the job. Skandalakis was forced to reveal the stark reality. Several prosecutors were contacted, and while all were respectful and professional, each one of them declined to be appointed as a new prosecutor. That fact shows the dangerous political environment around the case, an environment created to intimidate legal opposition. But Skandalakis chose himself. He had to take the case to prevent it from dying on a technicality. He specifically stated that he didn't believe that the case should be dismissed due to a missed deadline, so he decided to take on that bullet himself. For Americans, that's an act of valor, and it's a clear statement that the rule of law is not to be compromised by political fear. I'm personally relieved to see that we can finally have a prosecutor step forward to face Trump's criminal enterprise. Now, Mr. Skandalakis is on the clock, We expect a fair but determined review. And the first thing he has to do is literally process the evidence. He revealed a stunning physical volume of the case that's been inherited. He received 101 banker boxes of documents from the DA's office. These are 101 physical boxes. On top of that, he got an 8 terabyte hard drive containing the complete investigative file. He hasn't had nowhere near enough time to complete a review, but he stated that he's committed to an informed decision on how best to proceed. The heart of this case, which we believe is strong, uses the RICO statute, the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's normally reserved for organized crime, but it has the power to connect multiple, seemingly separate acts into one single criminal enterprise. The indictment alleges that Trump and his allies acted as a criminal organization to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The alleged crimes include the infamous phone call where President Trump asked Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to find the votes needed to win the state. If that's not corrupt, I don't know what is. They included the efforts to solicit state leaders, the alleged harassment of an election worker, and the pushing of phony claims that the election was stolen. That is the overwhelming amount of evidence the new prosecutor must now use to convict Donald Trump. Beyond the legal motions, President Trump used a direct action to try and dismantle the legal jeopardy of his allies. That was the second major effort to severely undermine the prosecution. He issued a sweeping, dramatic pardon to all defendants in the case and all other people involved in these fake elector schemes. That act, however, was entirely symbolic. The crucial legal point that we must emphasize is that a presidential pardon only applies to federal crimes. The charges Skandalakis is reviewing are state crimes, specifically brought under Georgia law. Therefore, a pardon has no legal effect in Fulton County. 0. It was a blatant political move designed to give cover to his allies and exert the maximum political pressure on the new reluctant prosecutor. The defense will still argue for presidential immunity, but because these are state charges, we know this is a legal gray area never before seen in the history of the United States. Because of this, it's a complex fight where his federal shield is significantly weaker. The ultimate legacy of this entire saga, from the successful disqualification strategy of former prosecutor Fani Willis to the failure to find a replacement prosecutor, is the crippling fear factor in the American justice system. Why did several prosecutors decline? They were afraid of the law. They were afraid of the retaliation and the chaos that will follow. That signals that in the face of immense power, the very agents of the law, the prosecutors, can be effectively deterred from doing their job. But Skandalakis stepped up when everyone else stepped away. He must now proceed, not just with the 101 boxes of evidence, but with the entire weight of the American justice system on his shoulders. His final promise is clear, and it's what we're going to hold him to: to discharge his duties without fear, favor, or affection. The case is back and Americans are watching, so we expect accountability, because the future of this historic prosecution hinges entirely on what this new prosecutor decides to do next. If you like this video, you can like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.